here on DawgNation Daily. We'll get ready to say hello to, once again, running late today. But we'll say hello to our guy, Davin Bellamy here, who does such a great job talking about Georgia football and has really been at the forefront of beginning of the season, Georgia defense, a group that needs to improve during the season. Davin was also the first to call out when he thought that improvement was starting to take place. And now on Saturday against Alabama, boy, it was on for everybody to see. Davin, what do you make about how in many cases, these very young Bulldogs defenders have really grown up right before our eyes? What has that been like to watch that take place?
Brandon, how's it going?
Great.
Oh man, I mean, it's just been a joy to watch, especially, this year I'm starting to break down the tape. And it's just good to see a game on game basis of these guys, getting better. Just even from the little things. Week 4, we played Bama, and we've already, had this, conversation about we don't have guys that can win on the edge, so we start running games. So you start to see that on third down versus Bama, and they were young guys then, and you got guys trying to go from the A gap to the B gap. You got guys playing in different, spaces that the games just didn't look good. You had guys tripping over each other, falling, not knowing, do I go pick for this guy? It just was a lot of, confusion. And then you turn on the tape last week, and I mean, these guys are running games to perfection. That just didn't start last week. This defense started to turn the corner. I would say that second half of the Auburn game where it just seemed like for young guys, there's going to come a time to where it clicks. And that's just not with football. That's with anything you do. Anything new that you're trying to do, there's going to be a moment where the light bulb goes off and it clicks. And I think that's what you saw last week. We saw it Mississippi State when they knocked QB1, out of the game. After the whole conversation all year was they can't affect the quarterback. We saw those sack numbers start, to go up. Gabe Harris, the last 6 games, he has more pressures in the last 3 games than he had in the first 6.
Yeah.
These guys are just playing better. They're growing up. And last night, you saw it. Another thing that we talked about when these guys first played was the mentality of the team. I thought early in the year, a lot of these young guys, just thought when I put the G on and I put that jersey on, I just turn into something. But you got to make yourself nasty. You got to make yourself play with some tude. And the difference that I saw, not only with just how better the players are in week 13 versus week 4, but I saw a different in mentality. I seen guys hustling downfield to take a chunk out of man. I mean, everyone just looked better. The O-line was more physical. Even though week 4, we gave up a 4th and 1. We talked about, Wednesday before the show, Wednesday before the game, rather, that Juan Gassett is not going to miss a 4th and 1.
That's right.
Anymore. He's just not going to do it. When you're when it's your 4th game playing, it's your first time playing Bama, you're still wet behind the ears, you're a freshman, that moment may be too big. But now we got 7 more games since then. Just the things why Georgia lost the game in week 4, I knew that through the film study that those mistakes had been, fixed and that it was going to be a whole different team, last Saturday.
Well, I'll tell you the other thing that comes to mind for me as you're talking, and I'm thinking about a guy you and I have talked about before, like Quintavious Johnson, for instance. I think one of the ways in which college football is becoming more like the NFL, the NFL is a salary cap league. You can't sign every free agent. You can't draft every player. You have got to make some tough decisions about who you think can play, and then you've got to trust your evaluation. And if your evaluation's wrong, then your team is going to suffer. I think that college football is becoming like that too. There was a day and age in which Georgia and a small handful of programs got all the 5 stars. Frankly, when you're hoarding the elite talent, you don't have to get your evaluations right. If this guy turns out not to be good, then just go down the roster and get the next 5-star and put him in there. And, law of averages suggests he'll probably be okay. But in this day and age, with NIL and with freedom of movement, transfers, things like that, you got to trust your evaluation, and you better get your evaluation right. If Quintavious Johnson does not turn out to be a player, if Gabe Harris doesn't turn out to be a player, then Davin, Georgia probably goes 8-4. I mean, there's a chance they don't even come close to competing for the playoff. And Georgia said, okay, we don't have to overspend for this player or go into the free agent market and bring in some player at some really, really high dollar amount because, we'll take a sprinkle. We'll get the guy from Army to come in, Elo Mendoza, but we think Quintavious is good. We think that Gabe Harris is good. We think those guys are okay, and we feel like we know how to evaluate talent. We're going to trust our own evaluation. And the fact that Georgia got that right from a
Yeah.
scouting and development standpoint, I mean, to me, that's why that Georgia's in this position. If Georgia overestimated its ability to recognize who could and couldn't play, then we're talking about a team going to the CarQuest Bowl or something right now, and not a team competing for the college football playoff.
Yeah, probably going to the Belt Bowl.
That's
that
right.
We went to
Yeah,
in
that's right.
2016 or
That's
15,
right.
whatever that was. But
When Nick Chubb tore him up.
they gave us, I think, $150 gift card to go shop at Belk's.
And back then, $150 and listen, back then, $150, you get a whole outfit with that. These days,
Yeah, you could, man. We was doing Christmas shopping in Belt. You know what I'm saying? But no,
I like it.
No, man, you hit it right on the nose, man. And you gotta give credit to Josh Brooks, man. I think he does a great job. Me and him have had some conversations, and I just was just talking to him about how has this changed since I've been gone, and I think he does a great job of kind of treating this like the NFL. Okay, we're not going to give Damon Wilson, who's an older guy, $1 million when I have a younger guy who probably has the same potential, but he's younger and he's cheaper. So you're starting to see the athletic directors that do it right are starting to do it like the NFL. I'm not going to give $1 million to a fifth-year senior when I have somebody that's a red shirt, year 2, 3 guy that I think could be just as good. And it's also Georgia hanging his hat on having the best coach in college football. I mean, I don't have to go pay $1 million for a pass rusher. I have a young pass rusher right here that I know this defensive wizard that we have is going to get the most, out of this player. So you got to tip your hats to Josh Brooks. And in this age of college football where it's a product that's on the field, it's not a culture. It's not a group of guys that have been working towards a common goal for 2-3 years. A lot of these teams are going to putting a product out, on the field, and that's what you pay for, a product, not a culture, not a team. I think in this day and age, Georgia is still holding on to development, the culture, and not putting a product out on the field, something I just paid top dollars for, but something that I created. And that's what you're seeing even all year, even to this point now of, you always ask the question, why they start slow, how they finish in games. Why is Georgia, why can they go to the deep end and not drown, but other teams can?
That's right.
When you are paying for a amount of money, and I know this from now with the NFL and the UFL, this will be my 9th year pro. When you're playing for a budget, a bottom dollar, there's a threshold that you have, right? And it may say, especially when we start getting the pros, it may say, do I want to go and hit that man as hard as I, possibly can when I'm not going, to the playoffs? They don't pay me enough for that. When you start getting to the league, you start hearing, they don't pay me enough for that. Well, now that's just trickled down, in college. So you dragging these guys to deep water in the fourth quarter, and you got one team thinking, they don't pay me enough for this.
Yeah.
My check is deposited. Like God said in the league, as long as my check is deposited on Friday, I don't care. Then you got one team that's saying, you know what, this is how we do it. This is Bloody Tuesday. So just as Georgia team, they've grown up, but also we got to give credit to how this team was built. It's more built off culture and not, a product. So you got to tip your hat off, to Josh Brooks.
No, I think that's really interesting. I got a couple of issues I want to get with you before we go. You mentioned Damon Wilson now at Missouri a moment ago. We haven't really had time to talk about this, but there's a story that came up late last week about Wilson, who left Georgia to go to Missouri, apparently leaving after he had signed essentially a contract with Georgia that, according to the terms, as has been reported by ESPN, was going to call for him to essentially pay a buyout back to Georgia. if he left after signing it. Well, he did allegedly, anyway, based on what the reporting, leave after signing it, and Georgia has now taken Wilson to court to recoup the money it feels like it's owed based on the wording in this contract. It's going to be a very interesting case to follow because obviously I think there are a lot of programs on college ball that hope Georgia win this, just given, I think you want, your contracts to have, some meaning that you have in place with these players. And, this is a new age here, Davin, because obviously, some people are going to be, wow, Georgia playing hardball with one of his former players here. But from my perspective, I think in this day and age of compensation and what is turned into be a kind of a big boy world here, that, if you're going to have contracts with players, I personally don't see anything wrong with holding the players to the term of the contract. Now, what's legal and what's not, I'll let the courts decide that. But in terms of the spirit of Georgia's pursuit here, I don't personally have any problem with Georgia doing this. As a former player yourself, what do you make of this new horizon where Georgia feels like a former player violated the terms of an agreement it had in place and is now seeking the money it feels like it's owed? What do you make of this story that did get a little bit of attention going back to Friday?
Sue them, and take them to court. These guys are playing a professional game now. This is not 4, 5 years ago, where you playing for, 7150 and a Pell Grant, in January. You guys are making top dollars, right? And when I sign that contract, no matter where I am, a six-figure deal, or like if you do not honor that contract, you are a professional player now. You are able to be taken to court. When you start bringing in money and we start talking about these $1 million, contracts for 20-year-olds, well, money is the root, of all evil. These guys aren't mentally stable enough sometimes to have, all this money. So now you get guys trying to get greedy. Let me sign this deal and still go to Mizzou. It doesn't work like that. You are a professional player now, and you have to, go by the contract. And even though David Wilson was a player for us, he is no longer a player for us. He bled and he sweat, with us. But this group that's on the, field now are the Georgia Bulldogs. You decided to take a dollar amount to go to Mizzou. And what I was told is you were given a contract that you have been happy with, but you wanted more. You wanted greed. That's why you went to Mizzou. You wanted more. You wanted greed. That's why you, allegedly took money from Georgia and then went to Mizzou. Now, what I do hope these guys do is when I first get that lump sum of money, I don't go blow it yet. I hope he didn't give 4%, to the agent. And I hope he didn't go buy a car. And I hope he didn't go buy a house because 9 times out of 10, he's going to have to pay that 6 figures back. Yeah. And we hope he still got it. But this is what you're going to see. I hope Georgia wins this so the rest of the league, can continue to do this. But when you start bringing in money, $1 million, young guys, they start to get greedy. And that starts to, put a mirror on being a good person when you start bringing, all this money in. So Jordan needs to take him to court if, allegedly, what happened, happened. So I'm with Georgia on this one.
Yeah, very interesting stuff, Davin. I appreciate that. Let me also finish with this. The playoff is different now than when it was when you played in it, but this part of the schedule is still the same. You win the SEC championship first Saturday in December. You get ready for a bowl game on New Year's Day. That's exactly what your team did. It was the Rose Bowl back then. What's this time like for Georgia? How much rest will they get? What's Christmas like? Just give me a small snapshot of what the month ahead looks like now. Less than a month, 3 weeks or so. What this time looks like for Georgia right now.
That first week, these guys have earned the right to rest. These guys have went through a gauntlet, a Royal Rumble of the most toughest league in college football, and they deserve to walk in the house, take off the hard hat, take off the work boots, grab a nice cold one, and chill out. So that first week is going to be just working out. Just come to the facility. Let's run around. Let's stretch. Let's lift. Then we start talking about Next week, we got a normal Monday through Friday schedule. Normal Monday through Friday schedule. Probably not going to be as physical as it was during the season. Let's just keep the guys very crisp. Probably not a lot of, full pads, not a lot of bloody Tuesdays. When we start getting to week 3, that's when you're going to start to see the regularly scheduled programming, come back.
Okay.
You want the guys still to be biting, by the time they get back, a month from now. So about week 3, week 4, you're going to start to see that physical, practice, start to come back. A little bit more bloody Tuesday, a little bit more, full pads. The first 2 weeks, I can almost, guarantee it. Coach Smart is chill, laid back. Just come in, work out, go get off your feet. About 10 days in, 10 to 13 days in, he's going to flip that switch back. And it's going to be chopping wood and carrying water and bloody and Tuesday. But right now, this first week, these guys have earned the right to rest. So let's get these guys back to 100%. It's Christmas time. Take your mind off football. Go back to your family. Guys that live too far, go to a teammate house. But after that, it's time to, clock back in and go get this natty.
I love it. Clock back in, get ready to go back to work, and bring it back home. Davin,
Yes,
that's
sir.
awesome stuff. I tell you, what you're doing on social media, looking at all of these, performances for Georgia and the way in which it's gotten better. I think a lot of Georgia fans have had a really good time seeing a lot of that. So remind folks how they can find you on social media and some of the great work that you're doing.
I really appreciate that, man. It's Team 7 meeting on, IG, One Love Media on YouTube, and Davin Bellamy 17, on Twitter, man. I really, appreciate the support.
Davin, great stuff. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Breda Pest Management.
Already, baby. You know it. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs, indeed. Great stuff there from Davin.